Well, looks like some of us are here.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Wanted to be early.
Absolutely.
Tried to chime in a couple times and missed it.
Yep.
It's kind of a good problem to have.
Yeah.
It shows people are interested in it.
Eric, how do you get that background behind you?
If you go to the actual Zoom,
I can't hear you, Eric.
Go to the Zoom application, Frank. Under so like in the upper right hand corner, there's an icon with your initials. If you click on that, it should drop down a menu saying has settings.
Okay.
And under settings, there's an option for background and filters. Pretty much you can add any picture you want there.
Cool. Okay. I'll try it out.
Can you folks hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, I had my speakers turned off. Sorry.
Eric, if you're at the front of the Zoom, at the main Zoom picture, how do you get to the video?
What do you mean?
Well, I just went to look at your settings that you mentioned, and now I can't get back to the video.
Oh, are you on a PC?
Yeah.
You can do Alt-Tab to switch windows.
Oh, thank you.
Mm.
There we are.
We'll get started in just a couple of minutes, everybody. Today is just doing our periodic Q&A session. So hopefully you've got some got some questions, and hopefully people here will have some answers for you. But we'll get started in just a few.
Eric, we can do a free-for-all, kind of everybody just chime in, or got to go to the chat to post a question?
As long as people are doing it properly, we'll do it by voice. If it gets silly, then we'll go to the chat.
Thank you.
Eric, can you check the chat room? I sent you a private message.
If you're looking for JMRI, there was an article in just the October dispatcher's office about how to get started with Operations Pro. If you're looking for JMRI in general, I would suggest just going to jmri.org. They have some tutorials out there.
No, I was talking about the one you just mentioned. I'm not getting any books or anything like that at the present time, and I'm not complaining. So if someone can help me, tell me what I'm doing wrong, why I didn't get that book or anything, or find out mine.
What do you mean the book?
Well, the article about JMRI that you just talked about in October. Is it online or something? We don't have to talk about now.
Well, you have an electronic subscription. So if you
I don't know how to get to it then. I'm doing it wrong.
Okay. Well, if you go to opsig.org.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to do that right now. I'm there.
All right. Go to on the left-hand side, do you see a member login or do you see members only site?
I don't. I'm looking at it says homepage about Operation SIG, join us, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Where would I see?
Well, if you see, do you see virtual meetups? You see dispatcher's office, and then there's probably a thing.
Member login. Okay,
Yep.
I'll do that right now. Give me a second. That's what I said. I need a little bit of help sometimes.
Hey, Eric.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm there.
Eric, it's Tom Bailey.
Hold on a second, Tom.
Hang on.
Bob, are you able to log in?
I think I'm logged in already. Annual meeting, my subscriptions.
Yep. Under the members only site, go to dispatcher's office online.
Members only site. I'm looking for it. Members on only site, but when dispatcher?
Yep. Dispatcher's office online.
Okay, I just went there. Okay.
And then it should default to say select subscription year.
You hear the all the discussion going on? Okay, but you still haven't been able.
And then basically, if you pull up
October 20, I see it there.
Yep. And you can pull, I would recommend using the high res version. You can zoom in on it. But that has the OpSIG, or it has the Operations Pro article.
And it worked. Thank you. I just didn't know how to do it, and it was my fault.
No problem. All right, Bob, sorry, Tom, did you have a question?
No, I was going to ask you to do something. A friend of mine logged in, and I was going to see if you could unmute him.
Oh, okay.
He said he's good. He said he's good to just listen in, so that's great. Okay.
Yeah, everybody right now, we're not, because it's a Q&A, assuming people are well behaved and mute themselves as needed, we'll let people unmute themselves to ask questions, but I'll probably do like a mass mute when we get started, just to
that's fine.
Just to reset. We get people who will leave like TVs and radios and things like that on in the background, and it tends to mess up everybody's audio.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric.
To Rich, talking about LD SIG, we actually don't have an event scheduled for the 4th. Our next one, so we're doing one, we're actually doing none next week, and Stephen Sprinkle and there's another gentleman who'll be presenting next week. And then we're taking the 4th off. Yeah, so the 27th, Steve Prevett is also going to be presenting. So we're actually going to be, these will be back, this week will be back to back with next Sunday. That was by design. I had to reschedule last week because of NMRA meeting had something and I had to work at the hospital. So we'll
Eric,
actually
you're
be
gonna be on something next week.
Yeah, we're going to have another, we'll have the normal traditional 2 presenter thing next week, a week from today. The Q&A is easier to move than rescheduling presenters who are already set up to present. So,
Okay, well, I just needed to know because we're going to reschedule my local club meeting that we were going to do next Sunday. So
okay.
to keep out of the way of this. So thank you.
Yep. Yep. All right, we'll give just a couple more minutes, let people connect up. For the OpSIG members, hopefully you've all been able to get access to the October issue. If you haven't gotten it in your mailbox already, should have shown up probably last week sometime. It was mailed probably 2 weeks ago. Online access went live on the 15th. So if you've got, we had a couple really big articles, so had less variety of authors, but some really beefy articles in there. So hopefully you enjoyed those. We've already getting the January issue queued up. Trying to stay on time and actually early from now on. So. I'm not sure if Seth is the person chatting with me. Seth, we'd be happy to add some more people. Right now, I have, we're going to continue the every 2 week session schedule. So again, the 27th we'll have, so a week from today, and then 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks. I'm currently looking for a presenter for October 11th and one for October 25th. We have one presenter for each of those dates, but I could use a second one.
Sure, whenever you want to drop me in.
Okay, is Seth Newman? Is that who it is? Or, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it just came up as Seth on my screen. So.
Oh, sorry about that.
But yeah, just shoot me an email and we'll figure out when you'd like to do yours. Be happy to have you present.
Good.
Same thing goes for anybody else. Like I said, we try to focus on operations more than we focus on layout design. Obviously, you got to explain what your layout's doing, but we got some complaints about that very early on when we were skipping over the operations portion. So, all right, well, we got 61 people. One other thing, and I'll put this out in let's link out in the chat. OpSIG actually has its own YouTube channel now. I've gotten all of the all the old videos copied over there. Let's see. That's the really memorable link right now. After we've had the channel for 30 days, then we can actually get a name for it. But it's linked off of the OpSIG website. We've gotten all the videos moved over. The downside on that was that we lost the current or the number of views, but that's okay. We'll run those back up. This way, all of the OpSIG stuff is on the OpSIG channel and not on my personal channel. So at the end of the month, I'm going to delete all the OpSIG videos off of my channel, and then you can just subscribe to Operation SIG. But the more people who subscribe to it, the higher it will rise up in the rankings and the viewing and all that. So if you can throw yourself a subscribe out there, that would be great. And with that, go ahead and open it up for questions. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mute everybody, but everybody has the permission to unmute themselves. So we're just gonna kind of start by muting everybody. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. So if you want to ask something, go ahead and unmute yourself and then mute yourself back. So we got a K Travers.
But I don't have a question.
Oh.
I unmuted myself.
Oh, okay. Well, if you have a question, then you can unmute yourself, but otherwise it's easier if everybody stays on mute just to keep down the noise. So.
Alex Schneider here. Could you tell us how to subscribe so that we can boost your rankings?
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yes, or
Okay.
the Zoom channel or whatever it is you wanted to subscribe to.
Okay, the link that's in the chat is the YouTube channel. If you have a YouTube account or a Google account, you can go out to that site and say subscribe. There's just a button that'll pop up on the screen. If you want to subscribe to OpSIG, that's a whole different thing. So. And that's the link for joining the OpSIG. Digital subscriptions are $10 a year. If you want our print copy, that's $25 a year.
Thanks. I am a member of the OpSIG. I just wanted to subscribe to the YouTube.
Yep. So just go on the link that I sent you there. And that, like I said, you have to have at least, I think it's 100 subscribers in order to get a customized name. That way, instead of this gobbledygook, it'll actually be something like youtube.com/OperationSig or OpSIG or whatever we can get. So just another way to share what we're doing here. So, all right. So that was an easy question. What else does anybody have?
I've got one, Jeff or Eric.
Sure, go ahead.
I talked to Jeff Yost this afternoon. He gave me a call. My OpSIG membership expires in March, but on my magazine, it said it expired in June. It's coming up.
Somebody told me that that's what happened. Let me, well, we can take care of some of these offline, but let me find you real quick, John.
Well, I didn't know if it was just a glitch in the programming or just me or.
Yeah, the date that it got printed, it said 3/31/2021. Is that right?
The date of the dispatch.
Yeah, the expiration date that was on the label or on the magazine.
Oh, I don't have it with me now. The expiration date that was on it was like 6/30/2021.
That's weird. Okay, well we'll check into it.
But I just didn't know if there's a glitch between what Jeff showed me as expiring and what the magazine showed me as expiring. I didn't know if there was a glitch in the changeover. I know you've been doing a lot of work changing that thing over.
Yeah, right now I show your subscription expires March 2021, and that's what we sent to the printer. So if it didn't show up as March 2021 or March 31st, 2021, then I need to have a chat with our publisher to see what happened.
Yeah, Eric?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, it's Jeff. Yeah, I sent you an email earlier today because I got an email from a member last night that he renewed for 3 years this past March.
Yep.
And I showed that in the membership file for him.
Yep.
His DO showed that he expired next June.
All right. Yeah, there's a couple of those floating around here.
Well, and I'm one of them. I checked mine after I saw his, and I put this in the email to you. I'm expired as we speak, basically. I have to renew before January, and it showed me good till next June. So,
yeah, well,
there's a few of us. But I sent you an email about it.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I
Okay.
was napping earlier. I was up late. We'll just have to sort out what happened because I'm showing this. Looks like the sheet was right. I have that sheet that we generated on an 823 to compare it against. I'm wondering if somehow things got shifted.
That's
So,
what I'm thinking happened.
you know, because what's in the spreadsheet is correct from what I can tell. Let me go find you real quick.
Yeah, because
Yeah, the sheet here shows that you expired 12/31/2020.
but my label showed 6/30/2021.
Yep, it looks like somehow because right above you, there's somebody who expires 6/30/2021. So that may actually be on Kevin and not me this time. So we'll sort it out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
For the OpSIG members, and I'll share this for you. We've been making a number of changes to the website, continuing to make it better. One of the things that's here, if you go to the members only site now, if everybody can see this, down at the bottom,
Yeah.
the My Subscriptions, this is basically what's in the database. This is what we base everything on. That Jeff Yost, who is talking, is our membership chairman. This is the information he works off of. This is the information we send to the publisher. So if this is correct, then like I said, it looks like there was a glitch with how the date got printed onto the magazine. But just go make sure that what's in the member site is correct. And if it's not, then you can either contact Jeff or contact me, either membership at OpSIG or webmaster. We're kind of joined at the hip right now because we're still working out some of the bugs in the software, but.
Well, I think you guys do a heck of a job.
Yeah.
And Eric, I know you put in a lot of hours, so
Yeah,
I'm not complaining. I just want to call it to your attention.
Oh no, that's fine. Like I said, we did switch to a new publisher who's doing, I think the new publisher is doing an outstanding job with the layout and all of that. He's certainly getting the things out on time, and I don't know how many people are Model Railroader subscribers. They have this habit of they've always been releasing the issue like a month prior. That's fine. Believe it or not, we actually could have done that this time because we actually had the digital copy in hand at the beginning of September. However, we decided that we're gonna shoot for the middle of the month prior to the issue date. I think that's reasonable because at some point something's going to slip, and I'd rather not disappoint people to say, well, it was always out earlier. I'm like, well, it says October, so. All right, how about some actual operations questions? How about that? Or operation, if you don't have a question, if you have something you want to show, that's perfectly fine too. But like I said, we'll.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Jim Rump in Lancaster, South Carolina. During the period when I'm modeling the Southern, they had a steam excursion program, which was fairly well known. So how do you handle a photo run by under different types of train control methods? My own layout is going to be timetable and train order, but there could be, the way you do it there is going to be different than you do it under track warrant control or manual absolute block or CTC or whatever. Just wondering.
Sure, that's a good idea. The fan trip, especially if you're doing modern operations, you want to have the occasional steam train. That's a perfect excuse to have I got one of Rapido's Royal Hudsons that's going to be making the rounds on my railroad. It's like, it's a fan trip, leave me alone. But I think in that case, I would probably just say, okay, the train has track and time, but I'll take, anybody else has ideas on that. Feel free to
That
unmute
brings up an
yourself.
interesting question. This is David
Yep.
Crow from Alexandria, Virginia. Would the actual excursion be run as an extra, or since it's not a scheduled train? And I guess assume if you're doing timetable train orders, you'll have train orders to authorize the trip and orders for other trains to know about the actual train running. So it's an interesting with timetable train orders because you got that dynamic in there with it being an extra.
There's a couple different. This is Dave Hussman, and well, actually, I'm currently in Arkansas, but there is you can do it either as, that would be one way that you would actually be running it like a work extra. So you could make it a work extra between the 2 points, or probably most likely you just give it the dispatcher would give it a all trains, following trains would have to wait at such and such a point until such and such a time. And that just basically stops all the trains. So there's nothing behind him. So he can move whatever he wants to do without having to flag. So you could, so in other words, westward trains wait at Bess until 3:45 p.m. And so the train until 3:45, the special can do whatever it wants to do past Bess. If you make it a work extra, then you have to put out basically the same order so they don't have to send out flags.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I know some of the excursions I've been on the Southern have been flying green flags. So there was, it was a regular train, but there was another section or more following it.
That really wouldn't help you in this case.
No, it wouldn't. But in fact, they often ran freight trains behind the excursion trains just in case they had trouble. So there was something close by for the emergency backup. But what you suggested sounds like a good solution for the run-by situation.
All right, it's a good question.
That same arrangement can also be used for a local, so the local doesn't have to flag behind it. I think they call them like a shoe leather order, and it kept the brakeman from having to walk behind it to flag and protect the rear end of the train while they did switching along the way.
Hello, this is Waylon. I used to work the excursions in the 70s.
Yep. Waylon, you just muted yourself.
There we go. Computers are a mess because I had to totally wipe a computer to, and I'll go grab my other one to talk to you. So this is back in the 70s, early 80s. And we would run sometimes as extras and sometimes as first or second section of a scheduled train. Part of that depended on where we were. If we're up in Virginia on the B line, it's unsignaled, we were timetable and train order. We were on the main, we just had a clearance card, gave us the opportunity, and we just went down the main following signals. So it varied depending on where we were.
All righty. All right. Rich Gosselin asks, is there anybody on here who works with SIMR operations? I use open rails, and it's possible to have multiple operators that run from a single server. Rich, do you want to explain what you're talking about? Are you talking just computer-based operations, or what are you talking about? I'm not familiar with open rails. but I guess I can Google it. Hmm. Okay, it's totally computer based. I do a lot of the single player games like Locomotion and some of those, but I don't have the latest version of this. But Jeff, you have a question about REA cars? You wanna...
Yeah. Yesterday I was at an estate sale, and came across a B&O wagon top box car that was an REA car. And my first thought was it had no reporting marks like a typical freight car would for interchange between the railroads. And I know that typically, like say the New York Central pacemaker cars stayed within the system and they didn't interchange about. So is an REA car, even though it didn't have all the reporting marks, is that still allowed to roam at will, so to speak, around the country? Or would that particular car just still, because it had no reporting, been just an express car within the B&O system in and of itself?
Was it considered a passenger service car?
I don't know. It was just a B&O wagon top that was blue and was an REA Express on the side. But all it had was the car number. It didn't have any reporting marks. So I wasn't sure, being that I modeled the Erie Lackawanna, I didn't know whether it's been worth to buy it or not.
Did you notice the number?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, but I didn't commit it to memory.
I would, are you sure that it's accurate?
No, that's another thing. I can't say that.
I would think that if it was a B&O boxcar, if it should be lettered for the B&O.
Well, it was
reporting marks.
It was lettered for the B&O, but it was also lettered REA Express Agency, but it didn't have all the reporting marks, the weight and the build date. Well, I had the build date, but it didn't have the typical reporting marks that you see on interchangeable freight cars.
REA, those kind of box cars, B&O, New York Central ran some. They were all, and Pennsylvania, they ran those particular cars in different mail trains. I know for sure that the X-29 Pennsylvania Railroad cars that were their box cars, they were equipped with passenger trucks and steam lines, ran in the Fast Mail Express for the Santa Fe all the way out to California. I'm pretty sure they also ran on the Missouri Pacific from St. Louis to Kansas City.
Yep, they did indeed. They did
Missouri
indeed. And they are labeled B&O-REX. And then
right. And they ran a number of those mix of cars that were primarily in express service. And they would take and use, they were Pennsylvania's, I think they weren't, Katy didn't have them that were labeled REA, but you could assume Missouri Pacific, I don't remember if their express box cars or their T&P box cars were labeled REA, but I know for sure I've seen them. I think they're accurate. Fox made the B&O wagon tops, and Red Caboose made the X-29 Pennsylvanias that are all labeled REA. And so you put them in a mail train, that's where I would think they'd go.
They're in mail trains. They can be head-end cars on passenger trains or mail and express trains, and they went anywhere. Basically, depending on what their contents were. They might come out of Philadelphia on a certain day full of magazines for Los Angeles or something like that, or they could come the other way full of silk or something like that. So it depended on what the contents were.
Yeah, B&O had 125 M53 round tops, wagon tops that were converted to passenger service for REA service. That was approximately 1940-45. By 1950, 100 of them were converted back to box cars, and you had 25 left. Those were the ones that were painted blue. I don't recall whether they had reporting marks on them or not. I'll check that out. I don't know if I'll be able to get back to that this afternoon. But if you're looking for a 1960 time frame or later, it's very likely that those 25 cars would have been converted back to normal box cars. And that was because the B&O bought, let's say 100 or so troop sleepers that were converted to express cars, and that freed up the wagon tops to be converted back into boxcar service. But those 125 cars were equipped with passenger braking systems. I believe that they still had quote unquote Bettendorf trucks, but don't know if they were upgraded for high-speed passenger service or not.
Do you know where they went through? Did they go through St. Louis, or did they come through Chicago, or how west did they go? Because
they went over the whole system and beyond. There was, I know there was one scheduled to go into Omaha, and they went a couple of other places, but they were basically free roamers. Hey, we got an express car. We'll load it and we'll send it wherever it has to go.
Yeah, I bought 2 of those. One, they're actually blue and green, at least in the Fox. I don't know if Fox did it correctly or not, but they don't necessarily run on the Santa Fe, but I'm going to cheat and put them there because they're really nice cars, and they do make sense going into Kansas City for express.
Yeah, it was a Fox Valley car. It was all blue. It was a real nice car. A buddy of mine in Miles, New York Central, he ended up buying it anyway. So, and he models like the mid 50s. So it probably was more relevant to him than definitely would have been to me. But thanks for the answers.
All right, that's great. Got a couple more questions. We're going to kind of group these together. I don't know if anybody saw the pretty amazing derailment footage that Virtual Rail Fan had in Kansas City. There was a 2-engine, looked like an auto rack train, derailed right on the bridge, like right in front of one of their cameras. So they got the full repair, and I think the track was basically up and running in about 24 hours. But the question here, Robert Tuber is asking, how can you run or model a work train during track maintenance and or a derailment to add a bit more operating interest? The other related question, we have a comment here for derailment. The track would be out of service with a foreman or manager in charge. Rec train would receive orders for the out of service limits, and from there the person in charge of the track would bring them in verbally to the scene. But the idea of doing a work train and having that as part of your session, that was the person's question.
Having it as a derailment will not increase your operation, because you not only have to give the track out of service to the work train, you also have to give it to every other train. And if the track's out of service, no one's operating through it except maybe the work train working on the derailment. So for the amount of time that you're working on the derailment and the track's out of service, nobody runs. So now if you want to do a work train that's just doing, maintenance and that, you can give them as a work train. They have to have working limits, and they have to have either flag protection, or else you got to give them, have the other trains not clearing. You have to tell it that it doesn't have to protect against other trains, and then that holds the other trains out of the limits and lets the work train work. But once again, it stops the other trains.
Yeah, unless you've got a double track main.
Yes.
Yeah, if you've got a double track main and you can work around it, then that's one thing. But yeah, otherwise you're going to lock up the entire railroad. So,
just with the work train, I was at a session about a year ago, and the owner actually has a regular work train. I was going to say a scheduled work train. That's not quite right, but which I actually was operating. And basically there was a time period where everything kind of was going a little bit dead in one part of the layout. So he sends out the work train. And when I was going out, we were distributing ties. So there were several flat cars loaded with ties. And we actually had to, gave me a pair of tweezers and I had to unload the ties. Although we had them glued together in bundles of about 8. So it wasn't quite as bad as it sounds.
Not quite as heavy to lift, you know.
And it was N scale.
Okay. Ooh, wow.
I've done that in a real railroad, and it's a lot harder to lift up a bundle of real ties.
Yeah, those ties are heavy. All right, we've got a question from David Correa about LCL peddler cars. Were these cars in only way freights so that they had time to do work at the stations? And then there's a comment from Rich Gosselin. I actually remember going to the Michigan Central Station, I believe it's in Detroit, with Grandpa to get product for his business from REA. Grandpa used to tell me about his time sorting mail on RPO cars in the early 30s. Well, we spent a lot of time down there walking around the yards as you could do in the early 50s. Oh, this is about that previous question. Don't remember anything specific about the cars, the REA cars. But for David's question about LCL peddler cars, were these only in way freights so they had time to do work at the stations? Anybody have a...
At Drake Olmsted's layout, he did the NYO and W, and he had LCL cars on passenger trains picking up the milk. You know, that was a big thing for the NYO and W. And they're called LCL cars. They weren't called LCL peddler cars. They're just called LCL cars.
Got it. Yeah, I remember Drake's layout. He was a good guy. I got to run there a few times.
Yeah, let me clarify the question. I was reading something Tony Koester had in one of the books about operations, where they talked about a peddler car, which was a car that was put on a freight train that had someone in it that actually handled LCL transactions as it goes along the line. And I was thinking, well, that's interesting, because if you were on a through freight, where you had to build time in the schedule for the work of the person in the peddler car to do the business he had to do at each station, handling the LCL freight that's handled in the car, or would this be in a way freight situation where, you know, the time is built in because you're doing switching and stuff like that? You know, it's just something I'm just curious about, because operations in the 50s is something that we do in our club, and I just didn't know something we wanted to do. But I think Tony Koester has way cars in his scheme, and but I don't know if anybody else does. But it was just a question that came up when I was busy reading some of the operations books that he puts out.
Generally, yes, the local freights would handle the LCL because they'd have to load and unload the LCL along the way. If you read the rules for conductors and brakemen, part of their duties is that they were supposed to be able to assist the station agents with the loading and unloading of LCL. And the late Reverend Jerry McGee, on his layout, he had the car right ahead of the caboose was the LCL car, and the waybill on it had each station and then had a little note of how many packages there were going to be handled at that station. And then you had to wait 1 minute. First off, you had to pull the car up in front of the depot so that they could get to the car from the depot. And then you had to wait 1 minute for every package that was being handled. And that's how you did the LCL on his layout.
You know, you could do the same thing for passenger trains if you want to simulate them move. When a train pulls into a station, that you're simulating people baggage. Maybe you know how many bags you have to unload at that station and delay the train by that much. That's an interesting concept.
But the other key factor on there is that at some point during the during the locals' work at the station, it has to actually get that car in front of the station and leave it there for the time it takes to work it.
All righty.
Well, hey, I want to follow up on that. Dave, you mentioned that it was the crew, the brakeman and the conductor's responsibility to help the station agent. Was that across the board for most every railroad, or was that just specific to individual railroads?
In the older rule books, I modeled the 1900, 1905 era, so I've got a lot of rule books from those eras. And pretty much most of the rule books that I have there say that. The newer you get, it's hit and miss, but most of them will say that kind of thing. It's usually in like the 800, 900 series rule books at the rules at the very back that lists the duties of all the different people. Mm-hmm. By the time you get to the 60s, it's not in the rule books because they stopped doing LCL in a lot of places.
Yeah, because Jack Ozanich had a train, the Nightcrawler, that ran an LCL car. And whenever I would run that, I would just, the first thing I'd do when I'd get into the town would spot it, and then I would go about the rest of my business. And I never went through the motion of like helping them. I would just leave it there the whole time I was in that particular locale. And then I'd pick it up and put it back in the train and hit the road. And not once did he ever come along and ask about that. So I just assumed that you just parked it and left it. Interesting.
I've read about the Ma and Pa back in the 20s to the 40s, where sometimes they would have two engines and, about a crew and a half, and they would actually split the train at a station while one engine was switching that area and the other part of the crew was loading and unloading their LCL car.
All right. It's good information. Thanks for everybody who contributed. Any additional questions out there? Who's next?
Well, if no one else is going to ask, I've got one.
Go ahead, Cal.
So I read somewhere that a lot of times in TT&TO controlled lines, if there were passenger trains, that there had to be an actual meet order written for the passenger train. They just couldn't rely on the inferior train getting out of the way of the superior train. And it's never been quite clear to me whether that was only if it was a meet between two passenger trains or if that was a meet between a passenger train and any other train. Has anyone heard of that?
So who are, I was going to say, go ahead, Dave. You're our resident TT&TO expert.
There are railroads that have a rule, something like that, and I don't have any of the rule books with me, so I can't tell you whether it's just passenger trains or all trains. I think it might be all trains, and it varies from railroad to railroad. I think the Canadian railroads are really big on that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Some of the other railroads, they didn't. They had to make a positive. Had to have a train order for a positive meet between the opposing trains and a passenger train.
Yeah. I think where I actually read this was in the CN Lines magazine, where they had interviewed a former train dispatcher. They actually found one of his train sheets from 1951. And he was still around, so he explained what was going on, but he made some comment in there about, well, the meet between the two passenger trains, although it showed in the timetable that they were to meet at a certain station at a certain time, that he was required to write a meet order for that.
The other thing that might get complicated is that those rules may actually be in the dispatcher's rules and not in the train rules. So unless you have the dispatcher rule book in front of you, you might never actually see that. Because the railroads cannot have too many rule books.
I was in communication with a John King, who's big on the B&O, and he had referenced a situation up in Ohio where indeed they had meat orders that was for a passenger train versus passenger train or simply first class trains. But the B&O did do that. I found it interesting that they were making sure that people knew just in case there might be a difference.
Is that something that would happen as a matter of course, or is that something that only needed to happen if, say, one of the trains was running late or something like that and the dispatcher needed to intervene?
It was my understanding on the B&O that was basically a rule. Now, which rule book it might have been in, I don't know.
Yeah, if it was required, it would have been it wouldn't have mattered whether the train was on time or late.
All right. Rich Gosselin is asking, he's asking, what is the LD-SIG doing as a missionary effort? Too many of us are 70 plus, and I can see a die-off of OpSIG and LD-SIG too. I'm not sure if he meant what is OpSIG doing as a missionary effort. I think one of the interesting things is if you listen to the NMRA calls, they pretty much have said we only really market to the recently retired model railroader. That's where they're focusing all of their efforts. I mean, OpSIG, I'd like to think that, between our Zoom calls, making them available sort of free of charge for anybody, I think that's kind of how we're trying to get people into the hobby. And we have picked up some members because they liked what we were doing here. I don't know about a missionary effort. Something we talked about with the board that unfortunately is sort of dead until we actually can operate in person was the idea of having OpSIG ambassadors, the people who would, who were OpSIG members and wanted to, convert the unwashed masses to show them how much fun operations can be, for their layout. The idea of giving out free issues of our magazine, shipping those out for events, so that if you go to, blank rail, one of the things you get as part of your registration packet is a free issue of the dispatcher's office, to try to encourage people to join. But I think in general, this kind of applies to anything, model railroading. It does tend to be just look at the pictures of every, go to the gallery view and just look at the people who are in this call. It's, I'm guessing I'm younger than most of you by probably about, at least 10 to 15 years. So it does tend to be an older person's group. You have to have the time, you have to have the funds. But we'll kind of leave that out there. Rich says, in Southeast Michigan, we're encouraging a lot of young folks, kids or grandchildren of regulars at standard op sessions. Burr Stewart's comment, young people getting degrees in transportation logistics would be a good target group to invite to operating sessions. The operating-sessions.com site is designed, something I built. It's designed to help operators, help layout owners find people to operate their layouts. But I'll take any comments, questions, suggestions in that regard. What are you guys doing? If you're in clubs, how are you finding new people? If you're in NMRA, how are you finding new people? Are you looking for new people? Are you actively recruiting and so on?
I'm in a club up in Charlotte that hasn't been meeting lately, but we have several members who are teenagers who are brought to the operating sessions by either a parent or a grandparent. And most of those we had first contact with during one of our annual open houses. And also there's another group in the Charlotte area that sets up a modular layout in the Southern Christmas Show every year, which is also not happening. But we have people that are in our club that are associated with the modular layout. And we also have flyers for our open house at the Southern Christmas Show, which has brought people into our open house where we actually do a good bit of our recruiting.
Here in Northern Virginia, I mean, we've been lucky enough that we have been having a lot of people coming in younger that want to do operations, you know, and one time, oh God, maybe about 10 years ago, we actually had a member who brought his two teenage daughters in, and they were one of our best dispatchers we ever had. They just love to do dispatching, and that's all they did at op sessions. So I think a lot of it also involves in club environment of having the availability to do op sessions and to also show your club members that, you know, this is part of the hobby, and it's an interesting part of the hobby. You know, it's not just running trains. If you're doing timetable train orders, it involves a little bit of thinking and knowing how to do that. So I think, you know, the point is well taken. That it is an older hobby, but it's just got to be done on that level of the clubs trying to get people to be interested. And then when they're, like I said, interested, then they maybe will tend to go to the op sessions that's available in the evening or in the area, or go to the conventions and be involved in OpSIG and stuff like that. So it's got to be a point where you actually start to get the groundwork done.
Yeah. To John, we are not getting into a discussion about the NMRA change in policy targeting minors. Holy cow. No. Yes, we're aware of it, but I don't want to, I've heard that it's not that complicated of a policy. So, let's see, Bruce's comment here. Actually, let's go back here. We got a bunch of comments here. In case you're not reading the chat, please open up your chat window. There's a lot of good comments in here. Chuck's comment, remote operations seem to be growing quite a bit in this COVID era. Does OpSIG offer in their quarterly newsletter any how-tos for setting up remote operations? Chuck, we are actually working with Bob Rodriguez out of Northern Virginia area. He's got one of the most, I'd say the most extensive remote operations sessions right now. I dispatched for him a couple of weeks ago. He's got actually he had a bunch of fixed camera positions, but now he's pretty much switched to train cameras. So essentially you're watching the cab view, which is, since he's got signals, that's far more entertaining, far more interesting to watch.
That Canadaga or whatever that was?
No. This Onondaga has some fixed camera positions. That was Dave Abelese. He was sort of the first guy who did it, but Bob has actually gone well beyond what Dave did in terms of his train cams that are excellent. And the point of that is there's actually we actually had Bob on a previous session on how he did it, but he's also working on an article explaining how to do it, all of the technical side of it. So, so that's coming.
On those train, Eric, there's a thing called Cop Cam, which I borrowed from Ron Christensen the other day, and they say they're $40, but I've seen them for as low as like $17, and they record, like, depending on the memory you get on it, they'll record like 15 minutes worth of video, and it will recycle. But you can also make so that you can. I've got one of my radio control airplanes that it sends out the video, and they've got Wi-Fi too, and they're pretty neat.
Yeah, his are actually live cameras. I mean, they're basically there's very little lag. So I mean, you push the horn button, you can hear it through the camera. You know, it's using the there are Raspberry Pi cameras sitting in the car transmitting to his Wi-Fi. The only problem he has is he had too many cameras sucking down the bandwidth. And so he's actually going to remove some of the fixed positions to free up bandwidth for the train cams. So it's a very cool thing to watch. So
just along those lines, Eric, I just got permission from my next door neighbor to use his Wi-Fi for some of my cell phone cams to alleviate the bandwidth problem, during an op session.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else that you can consider doing, is just reaching out to people around you that have internet upload speed that you can work out a deal with them.
Yeah. Well, luckily I just got fiber to the house now, so I'm pushing 900 megabits up, which is pretty sweet. But let's see. I'm just looking through the comment. Okay, there's lots and lots of comments. I'm not going to read all of these here. Let's go back here, find a question. Somebody's asking about a spring switch. It looks like Seth has already gotten that covered. Promo stuff in hobby shops. OpSIG actually sends some of our issues to, there's about 5 or 6 hobby shops that actually stock our magazines. We're considering putting them into more stores. It's just a lot of the stores aren't open. So I think the other thing that they mentioned during the NMRA call is the fact that a lot of people don't have railroads near them anymore. You know, kids don't see trains every day the way, some of you probably did. I mean, I grew up where my elementary school was right next to a very busy train line, so we saw lots of trains. My dad got me into the hobby, but it's a hobby. It's surviving. It's certainly not dying. It's a niche, and operations is a niche within a niche. So, and it looks like from Seth, the Silicon Valley lines are presenting onboard cams and remote sessions on NMRA X next week. So watch that on YouTube. See what they're doing with remote operating sessions. But all right, any more ops questions?
I have something that's been bothering me. I'd like to know if anybody in the group has any recommendations about this. I understand the role of the timetable in timetable and train order operations. But my I have a layout with a lot of yards and at least 3 critical yardmaster positions. And I'm having trouble figuring out how to explain to the yardmasters what blocking needs to happen for the trains they're going to send out. And I just found out recently that the railroads had something called the operating plan, which could be changed at any time, but it was basically the same every day. So it was like an internal schedule of trains, most of whom were, in my era of the 70s, they were mostly run as extras. But it included all the blocking plan for each train, like which train would stop where and drop which blocks. My question is does anyone have a really good way of explaining that to yardmasters in some sort of a document that also the train operators could reference as well when they want to understand the role of their own train better?
I've got one I can show you right now.
Okay.
This is John Hansky. This is on the first camera so you can see it. Well, I gotta get rid of my virtual background.
John, if you want to share your screen, go ahead.
Okay, let me get rid of the virtual background first. Oops, none.
Oh, you don't have to do that. You can just share.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it wasn't. For some reason, it wasn't working.
Okay.
Okay, and share the screen. There we go.
Yeah, I think you showed us this on your virtual layout tour.
Yeah, and it's I don't know what I've done here. Oh, sorry guys, I screwed something up considerably.
Easy to do.
Yeah. Now everything has disappeared on me. Oh, there we go. Here I am. I'm back. I turned off my own video. All righty. There's that's for Dunsbury Yard. And it shows the train number there, 30212, and then the symbol, and then cars from Medford as follows in that order. And you actually tell and it's called the yard blocking order, you actually tell the yard operator what cars go on that train. And it's just a simple little, little write-up. And then down here, I just pulled these off because I've been doing some painting. This is car routing by city. And it just shows the city and what train that car will go on. There's a train name and then the order in the train. That's what that says, like Grand's cans, then Driscoll paper. And then down below, like that would go Lotus scrap, Sunshine Grain, Queensley Furniture, then the interchange. And then I've also got it written up by the industry. So if you're looking at a car card and you say, well, something's going to go to Grand's cans, which it just stopped focusing. Or say Driscoll paper there, I could see it. That goes to train 308, and you know where that car is supposed to go. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yes, it does. Do you have some sort of a master document that you built those off of, or did you do it all by manually?
I did that, well, off my timetable. Like these are the breakouts for the timetable. And I just listed, and this is all done by spreadsheet. I just took, like, this is train 302, 12, 202 in order. I just copied that into a vertical way of looking at it.
Right.
And then just, thought, well, what industries are at that town?
So the combination of all of those sheets would be the operations plan.
Yeah.
And that's it. And only, nobody really needs to see the whole plan, because if you're working a particular yard, you just need that particular information.
And you don't really want to see it because it's
Yeah.
it's just too much info. I have a master sheet of that. I wrote them all up. Just so if somebody says, hey, where's this train? What train does this car go on to? Where's it go? Well, anymore, I've got pretty memorized. If something goes to Driscoll paper, well, you put it on the Ashland block. It's not that hard. Well, same thing with the blocking for the through freights that will go from all the 200s, I call them, that go from, let's see if I can call up DMPD2 here. See if I can find it underneath my finger. Right there, that's number 204, and that goes in blocks: Seattle, then Spokane, then the Dalles, then Wishram, then Pasco, then local Portland. That way, when that train gets up to Portland, he's not sitting there switching onesies, twosies at a time. Right. Now, I have had guys say, well, I'm not going to do his work for him, and just refuse to do it. And then you see them sitting around, and I think, well, you got time to do it, you know, help the next guy out. So I hope that answered it.
Yep.
Say, Burr, I remember seeing something similar to that up on Dr. Bruce Chubb's layout, as far as his car cards are all color coded. So it makes a little bit, you know, considering the scope of his layout, it's a little bit easier to figure out where the cars are going. I don't have any good pictures of it though, but might be another option for you.
Joe Berger has that, and he's got colored and also patterns on top of the cars on the waybills, because there's so many different destinations. He ran out of colors, so he actually put like a blue checkerboard, a red checkerboard, or, you know, blue dots in the background. And anything to help out will help out.
I've got a prototype document. My layout's not constructed to the point where I'm doing any operations on it yet, but it's a prototype document I can share that looks at it on a per train view rather than a per yard view, but the information could be extracted from that.
And actually that works well for an operating session, because a lot of times the train will come in and they'll start talking to the yardmaster about what needs to be done. So if the train operator has that information, that probably helps.
Yeah, well, Eric, can I share this? And you're muted, Eric.
There we go. Yeah, go ahead, Tim. You have something to share?
Yeah, this happens to be for train 165, and you can see it originates in Spencer. It lists the connections. It lists the blocking in the train when it leaves Spencer. It doesn't go into details about what work is at the intermediate stations, but that can be figured out. You know, it arrives in Asheville, connections in Asheville, blocking leaving Asheville, and so on. And that was, like I said, this was a document that I found online that happens to be dated February 1st, 1979, which is 4 years after the operating, you know, my layout period, but it's, you know, things don't change that much during that time period. So that's something that I'm looking forward to extracting a lot of information from, to take that kind of information, give it to the yard masters and the train crews.
So does that document also, it says schedules and blocking instructions.
Yes.
Did the previous page you showed us have a time for that train?
Yes, it has.
Oh, yes, it did. Okay.
You can see here.
Yeah, it has a time. So
it has times. The times are not the same as the times in the employee timetable.
Of course, because those are just the schedules in the timetable.
Right.
And these trains could be run as extras, so they wouldn't care what the schedules were in the timetable.
Well, these trains were run in the timetables. The times that are listed in here are generally between 30 minutes and an hour and a half behind the times in the employee timetable.
Right. Right.
Tim, I used to have a Conrail version of this that I sold at the last the convention or something like that, which had, similar to this, it had the train listed, but it also had the times and the locations were always major yards that it go through, and the work that needed to be done at each yard, and what needed to be switched out of that yard, what blocks, and so forth, and from the starting point of the train to its destination. So it's very similar to this document. And I've seen this document online too. I think it's on the Southern Historical site or something like that.
Yeah, and you can see here for 157, it's got, it again leaves Spencer 2:30 in the afternoon. There's the blocking. In Kannapolis, it sets off the Kannapolis box, but it doesn't say to pick up anything. It's got times for Charlotte, connections in Charlotte, set off Charlotte box, pick up Columbia block, the blocking leaving Charlotte, Columbia, you know, the times that it is supposed to arrive and leave in Columbia, connections there, and then it goes on from Columbia to Augusta and eventually to Savannah. So that's not the sections I'm modeling, but that's the sort of information that's in this document.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim, if you can stop sharing, Scott Sabo has an example from his club that he'd like to share.
Yep.
Scott, go ahead if you have that.
Yeah, sure. I'll just pull it up here.
While Scott's doing that, can I ask a quick question? Which is how much, when a train comes in to pick up a block, how much would you expect the yard to merge the block that it's picking up with the stuff that's already blocked on the train for the same place?
Well, I would think you'd put it either at the, you know, if you've got a block of 3 cars heading to some location, your new block is just going to either go at the beginning or the end of it. As long as it's together, most places you don't have to get it in car number order. As long as the cars going to Upper Slobovia are all together, that's good enough. Other people have opinions on that?
Yeah, I've got one where the well, when we operate on burgers, he's got it'll leave Interbay, then go to Gold Bar, and then go to Wenatchee, and then go up to Japan. And those blocks are, one goes in the front, one goes in the middle, one goes in the back. That way, when the guy pulls in, he knows he takes the front at Gold Bar. He takes the front block and he puts it back on the front. And then goes up to Wenatchee. That's at the back of the train, and they take the back of the train off, whatever that block is, and then they put the next block back on for Spokane. And it's actually written up in the orders, in the train orders. And when it is not blocked correctly, when you're running a 25-car train, when the poor guy at Wenatchee or Gold Bar gets it and it's not blocked correctly, oh my. Just oh my.
Get it. Okay. Thanks very much. Sorry to interrupt, Scott, what you were doing there.
Oh, no worries. So our club at Fort Edmonton, basically, each yardmaster's got a lineup like it's on the screen right now. And also they got a track that they recommend those trains come in on because of the length of the tracks or access to the station. So that's one document that the yardmaster has. The other document they've got a blocking document as well, and basically explains what the block is and the destination. So our car cards actually have the block on them, as well as the car information and all the issues, but it also has the ARR, the VE, and the EW on there. And then at the bottom, basically, there's your northbound and southbound blocking areas. They kind of explain what cars and what groups. And if it's on the car card, it's very easy for the guy to figure out that, okay, put all the VEs together, put all the ARs together. And then once they get elsewhere, it then is up to the individual car cards to get to the actual destinations. So that's something that's kind of a Cole's notes of what we do.
Does that help you?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. What order is this Castlegar car assignments? What order are these in?
The main table there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main
showing
table
on the screen.
Yeah, so the table is basically, that table's going from, let's see, north to south is what the table is. That's the organization of the table.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so our towns would be, that's in the order of the towns, yeah. And then some of the wave freights, for instance, you'll say only put on the EW cars and the EXP cars, the OR cars. So that's for some of the local wave freights out of there. So yeah.
All right.
And Eric, I've got another set of an example on that I could show.
Okay. Go ahead.
Here is the wow. Nope, it's not there. Let me get rid of virtual background again. I don't know why I have to. It just says I have to. because I'm on my phone. Okay, there's the car card, which sits in the car card box. This is what we call the train card. So when the guy's making up a train, this goes from Dunsmore to Portland. You know, try to arrange in blocks for Seattle, then Portland, or Spokane, then Portland. Now on the weight freight, this is also in the box. This is for 302. Cars for these industries in that order, front to rear. So it's another reminder. And then this is what the Portland Yardmaster has. Time of the train, it's a departure. So he's got to get that. The time will come off his timetable because that's always changed. But where I used to have train or yard track numbers, they're still here. You know, where to make up that yard, that train, the car limit, and then over here is, you know, is it blocked? Is power on it? Caboose? It's ready. It's done. It's gone. And anything you can do to help out the yardmaster will help. What the dispatcher sees is this. Here's a departure time. Let's see. There'll be a departure time and a crew call time, which is typically 10 minutes different. So the yardmaster is to have his train ready 10 minutes before the departure time. And that way he knows when it's supposed to be done, and that's the cutoff. Anything after 10 minutes after the cutoff, he just starts another train. That train's completed. That train is not to be added to. Okay, that's all I got.
Thanks, John. All right. Well, we're at had a lot of good discussion. Appreciate everybody's contributions. That's the reason we do these every so often. Just we'll change the pace and get all sorts of interesting questions. So if there isn't anything else, I will we'll go ahead and cut this off. Thank everybody for coming. Again, the next session will be next Sunday. Again, this one got shuffled due to a conflict on my part. Watch your email for the invitation. For those of you who had questions about the subscription date printed on the list, I'm going to send an email off to our publisher and see what happened. Like I said, right now it looks like the dates all got shifted by one row when they imported the data. The spreadsheet that we sent them was correct, and Jeff and I will go through that, and something happened at the print side. But in the meantime, if you have any trouble getting into the website, just a couple of tips. One, don't use Internet Explorer 11. Internet Explorer 11 is deprecated, is no longer supported by Microsoft. We recommend using either Chrome. If you're worried about privacy, there's a browser out there called Brave that has better privacy controls. You can also use the latest version of Microsoft Edge, which is based on the Chromium engine, but does not feed all your data to Google. Firefox, I believe, also works okay, but Firefox is kind of a pig memory-wise. So if you're using any older browsers, you gotta upgrade. But otherwise, most people have been able to get in. There was an issue this past week with some of the passwords not getting through. Certain ISPs were sitting on the mail for hours on end, just making us retry. But those issues there are a couple people complained about that. But in the meantime, thank everybody for coming, and hope you have a good day. Go play some trains. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Eric.